Police in Colorado say they have found two bodies they believe are the daughters of Christopher and Shanann Watts. Christopher Watts reportedly confessed Thursday to killing his pregnant wife and two daughters.
In a cruel twist of fate, Shanann Watts found herself caught in a chilling nightmare that shattered her once ideal life. A devoted mother pregnant with her third child and a family that had overcome financial hardships. Little did she know that her husband would transform into the most infamous and haunting modern-day serial killer. Join us as we delve into the harrowing story of Shanann Watts, a tale of love, betrayal, and a descent into darkness that defies comprehension. The summer of 2018 was supposed to be a joyful time for the Watts family. Chris Watts, 33 years old, and his wife Shanann, 34 years old, were excited to learn that they were expecting a baby boy to join their two daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, in their suburban home in Frederick, Colorado, just outside of Denver. While Chris worked as an operator at Anadarko Petroleum and Shanann traveled frequently for her job at a nutrition supplement company called Lavelle, their focus was on their daughters. Shanann often shared their family moments on Facebook, giving the impression of a happy suburban life. However, behind the scenes, Shanann's friends began hearing about troubles in their relationship. Little did anyone suspect the horrifying and brutal murders that were about to shatter their seemingly perfect life. Here's how it all unfolded. Everything began way back in 2010. Chris sent Shanann a friend request on Facebook, despite her being from Passaic, New Jersey, and him residing in North Carolina at the time. Shanann accepted the request, thinking she would never meet him. However, their connection grew over time, leading to a relationship. They eventually moved to Colorado and had 2 children together, making Chris the best thing that ever happened to Shanann, as she shares in a later Facebook video.
Bella, say hi. Bella, say hi.
Then on November 3rd, 2012, Shanann and Chris got married in Charlotte, North Carolina. A year later, their first child, a daughter named Bella Marie Watts, was born in Colorado on December 17, 2013. Shanann was overjoyed and grateful for this precious gift from God, treasuring every moment with her. Not long after, 2 years after their first daughter, on July 17, 2015, Shanann and Chris welcomed their second daughter, Celeste Catherine Watts, affectionately called Cece. She was born during the summer in Colorado. Shanann's battle with lupus makes the arrival of another child particularly meaningful, as she had been determined to stay healthy. Every moment spent with Celeste is cherished as a blessing, according to their family obituary. In June 2015, the couple faces financial difficulties and files for bankruptcy. Their combined income of $90,000 in 2014, along with credit card debt, student loans, and medical bills, led them to take this step. Their monthly expenses of $4,900, mostly allocated to their $3,000 mortgage and $600 car payments, put a strain on their finances. Furthermore, they faced legal action from their homeowners association due to unpaid fees. On May 5, 2018, Shanann shared a heartwarming Facebook Live video. Lasting over 31 minutes, she reflected on family life and expresses her joy in waking up on Saturdays and spending time with her loved ones. She talked about the upcoming summer in Colorado and shared her belief in the purpose behind life's events and the significance of the people we encounter. In the video, Chris can be seen playing with their daughters, creating happy moments together. 3 years after their second daughter, on June 11, 2018, Shanann surprised Chris with the news of their pregnancy in a video that was later released. Wearing a shirt that read, "Oops, we did it again," she shared the joyful announcement with him. Chris reacted positively, saying, "That's awesome." Then 6 days later, on Father's Day, Shanann posted a heartfelt message to Chris on Facebook. She expressed immense gratitude for his constant care and support, acknowledging the many things he did for their family, from handling laundry to looking after the kids. She credited him as the reason she felt brave enough to agree to have a third child. The message concludes by wishing Chris a happy Father's Day and emphasizing their luck in having him in their lives. But little did she know that the luck will run out soon enough. In June 2018, Chris began conversing with Nicole Kessinger, who works in the environmental department of Anadarko Petroleum, where Chris was an operator. They would often encounter each other while getting refreshments from the office fridge. Their initial conversation led to a meeting outside of the office later in the same month. But shortly after, in July, according to the Denver Post, Chris began a physical relationship with Kessinger. They saw each other about 4 or 5 times a week, and their involvement became intimate early in the month. Chris informed Kessinger that he is almost divorced, and later, when Shanann and their daughters are out of town, he told Kessinger that the divorce is finalized. As reported by Insider, their interactions progressed rapidly. They had their first meeting at Chris's home on July 4th, followed by their first recorded phone call on July 7th. They went on a date to the Shelby American Collection Car Museum on July 14th and spent a night together at Great Sand Dunes National Park on July 28th, all while Chris's family is away. On July 30th, Chris gave Kessinger a love note before he went to reunite with his family for their vacation. 3 days later, Chris went to North Carolina to join his family for their vacation. Texts forwarded by Shanann to a friend indicated tension and trouble in their relationship, including issues with Chris's parents. Next month, just weeks after starting their relationship, Kessinger spent 2 hours browsing online for wedding dresses, as revealed by her cell phone data. This indicates that Chris might have manipulated her into believing that he would marry her. On July 9th, Shanann departed on a business trip to Arizona after confiding in friends about her difficulties with Chris. She texted a friend before leaving, mentioning that she and Chris had their best talk yet. She even wrote a handwritten letter to him, expressing her thoughts and feelings. 3 days later, while Shanann is out of town, Chris hired a babysitter, claiming that he's going to a baseball game with his co-workers. However, instead of attending the game, he went to a bar with Kessinger. In the early hours the same day, around 1:48 a.m., Shanann returned from her business trip. Her friend Nicole Atkinson gave her a ride back home to their residence on the 2800 block of Saratoga Trail. That morning, Chris woke up Shanann while he was getting ready for work and wanted to discuss their marriage and future. In his later confession, he revealed that he disclosed his affair to Shanann and expressed his belief that their marriage was not going to last. In response, Shanann made a statement saying that Chris would not see their children again. This led to a heated confrontation, and in a moment of rage, Chris strangled Shanann to death. Their 4-year-old daughter Bella entered the room and asked what was happening to her mom. Chris wrapped Shanann's lifeless body in a blanket and placed her in his truck. He then put the 2 kids in the back seat and drove to his work site. Once there, Chris smothered Celeste in the back seat and disposed of her body in an oil tank. He repeated the same horrifying act with Bella, placing her body in another tank. Chris also buried his wife's body nearby, as he later admitted while in prison. The next day at around 1:40 p.m., Atkinson, a friend of Shanann's, became worried when she doesn't receive any response from her. Concerned about her well-being, Atkinson tried calling and texting Shanann multiple times. She knew that Shanann had a doctor's appointment that morning because she was pregnant, but Shanann didn't show up for it. Growing increasingly alarmed, Atkinson contacted the local police to report Shanann missing.
So my friend, we were out of town for a business trip this weekend.
Right.
And I dropped her off at 2 o'clock this morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant. She wasn't feeling well, and she had a doctor's appointment this morning at 9, and I told her to let me know if she needed me to take her. She's got 2 little girls.
During the welfare check conducted by the police, Shanann's phone, keys, and purse were found at her house. Chris, Shanann's husband, told the news stations that she mentioned going to a friend's house with the kids, but beyond that, he has no further information. His statement was vague and raised suspicion.
I want them here. Like, this house is not the same. I mean, last night was traumatic. Last night was...
The following day, on August 14th, as the Colorado Bureau of Investigation issued an endangered missing alert, Chris appeared on Denver's ABC affiliate and made a heartfelt plea for his family's return. He begs Shanann, Bella, and Celeste to come back, expressing his desperate need to see them again. Chris emphasizes that his house felt incomplete without them and urges anyone who may have them to bring them back. On August 15th, the FBI joined the search efforts for Shanann and her daughters. Chris undergoes a polygraph test, but fails it. He then confessed to his father Ronnie, and later to officials, that he killed Shanann. However, he deceitfully blamed Shanann for smothering their daughters as the reason for his horrifying actions. On August 16th, the bodies of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste are discovered at the location where Chris had been working. On the same day, Chris appeared in Weld County Court for a bond hearing, but is denied bail. Kessinger, Chris's former mistress, spoke to the police the same day and expressed her belief that Chris had been mentally unstable for a long time, even before their relationship began. She stated, "I genuinely think he was losing his mind before he met me." A week later, on August 21st, Chris was formally charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. In addition to those charges, he faced 2 more first-degree charges, specifically for victims who were 12 years old or younger. He is also charged with unlawfully terminating a pregnancy and tampering with the bodies, making a total of 9 charges against him. On September 1st, a funeral was held for Shanann and her daughters in Pinehurst, North Carolina. The ceremony took place at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church and lasted for about 90 minutes. The service began with a rendition of Amazing Grace, and notably, Chris is never mentioned during the proceedings. The priest read a statement from Shanann's father, Frank Zuchek, expressing his love for his daughter and referring to her as his little girl. On November 6th, Chris appeared in court and pleads guilty to all 9 charges against him. Shanann's family requested that the death penalty not be pursued in his case. On November 19th, Chris received his sentence. Judge Marcelo Kopkov described the murders as one of the most brutal and inhumane crimes he has ever encountered. Chris is handed 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, along with additional years of imprisonment for unlawfully terminating Shanann's pregnancy and disposing of his family's bodies. In response to the tragedy, Shanann's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Chris. Due to concerns for his safety, Chris is transferred from Colorado to the Dodge Correctional Facility in Warpen, Wisconsin on December 3rd. Then on February 18, 2019, during a 5-hour interview conducted from prison, Chris provided a detailed explanation of how he killed his daughters.
What they say specifically?
It was more like, what are you doing to mommy?
Okay.
He confessed to ending their lives and disposing of their bodies. Chris admitted to an overwhelming rage and losing control, describing the moment as the pinnacle of anger. He even revealed that his older daughter, Bella, questioned if he would do the same to her as he did to her sister. He further acknowledged that his 4-year-old daughter attempted to resist his actions by fighting back. On November 18, 2019, nearly a year after Shanann's parents initiated the civil lawsuit, a judge in Weld County, Judge Todd Taylor, decided that Chris is obligated to pay them $6 million. The amount is divided into $3 million for each death and an additional $3 million for the emotional suffering caused. The sum will continue to accumulate with an 8% interest rate. Although it's improbable that Shanann's parents will actually receive the money, this ruling ensured that Chris cannot benefit financially from the horrific murders in any manner. Prepare to be gripped by a chilling tale of resilience and unimaginable horror. Meet Lindsay Hawker, a woman whose lifelong pursuit of knowledge led her to Japan, where she sought to make a difference by teaching English. Little did she know that her noble mission would soon descend into a nightmarish ordeal. In this harrowing account, we delve into the story of Lindsay Hawker and the sinister man who would go to extreme lengths, even altering his own face, to elude capture. On March 24, 2007, something unsettling happened in Chiba, Japan. Lindsay Hawker, a 23-year-old woman from Coventry, England, disappeared without a trace. What followed was a 3-year-long search by the police. Lindsay was a beloved member of her community. She excelled in her studies and graduated with top honors in biology from the University of Leeds in 2006. Seeking some time off before pursuing her master's degree, she decided to travel. In October of the same year, she joined the Nova Teaching School and embarked on a journey to Japan, a beautiful country. Upon arriving in Japan, Lindsay was assigned to Koiwa, a district in Edogawa, Tokyo. To save on rent, she chose to live in Chiba, a city slightly further east, sharing an apartment with 2 fellow Nova school teachers who soon became her friends. Despite the distance, Lindsay stayed connected with her family and boyfriend in England through various means like Facebook, WhatsApp, Skype, texts, and calls. She relished her time in Japan, and everything appeared to be going smoothly. 6 months into her stay in Japan, in March 2007, Lindsay had a strange encounter. After finishing work, she went to Chiba Station where she usually kept her bicycle. While unlocking her bike, a man approached her from behind and said, "You are my English teacher." Lindsay found this odd because she was certain he wasn't one of her students. Politely, she ended the conversation and hopped on her bicycle to ride back to her apartment. To her surprise, the man started following her. When she increased her speed, he ran after her. While trying to escape, he bombarded her with questions like, "Where are you from?" and "Where did you study?" Lindsay couldn't shake off the man, and eventually she stopped her bike outside her apartment. Once again, he approached her. He asked if she could give him English lessons because he felt he needed help with the language. He suggested meeting at a public cafe where she would feel comfortable, and he promised to pay generously per hour. Lindsay declined his offer, explaining that she was too busy with work and barely had any free time. The man seemed disappointed, but accepted her answer. Then he asked if she could give him a glass of water because he was thirsty from chasing her. Reluctantly, Lindsay agreed and let him into her apartment. She wanted her housemates to see his face in case they encountered him again, and she also wanted to show that she wasn't living alone, hoping it would deter the man if he had any harmful intentions. Once inside the apartment, the man persisted in asking Lindsay for English lessons, but this time he offered to pay her 3,500 yen per hour. Tempted by the easy money, Lindsay reluctantly agreed, and they scheduled a meeting at a coffee shop a few days later. The man seemed grateful for her acceptance. Before leaving, he grabbed a pen and a scrap of paper and hastily scribbled something. To Lindsay's surprise, he handed her a note with a drawing of herself and his name and phone number. The note read, "Tatsuya Ichihashi, phone 047-356-7238. Tatsuya, a 28-year-old man originally from Ichikawa but living in Chiba, had ambitions to become a medical doctor like his father. However, when he was denied further education opportunities, he settled for a degree in horticulture from the University of Chiba in 2005. After graduating, he didn't make any effort to find a job and instead relied on a monthly allowance of 100,000 yen from his parents. While Tatsuya had no previous criminal record, he was once suspected of theft and assault. Allegedly, he had attacked a woman during a robbery, but his father paid her 1 million yen to resolve the matter outside of court. Tatsuya was often described as a loner with a strong interest in physical fitness. He regularly visited his local gym and cycled more than 25 kilometers every day. On Saturday, March 24, 2007, Lindsay and Tatsuya had their first English lesson at a nearby coffee shop. CCTV footage captured them conversing in the queue while ordering their drinks. Lindsay didn't appear visibly uncomfortable, but she made sure to maintain some distance between them. If Tatsuya got too close, she would step away. The lesson lasted a little over an hour, and nothing appeared unusual during that time. After the English lesson, Tatsuya told Lindsay that he had forgotten to bring the payment and invited her to his apartment, which was just half a mile away, to collect it. Lindsay agreed, and they took a taxi together. Arriving at Tatsuya's home, Lindsay asked the driver if he could wait since she needed to go to work that afternoon. The driver agreed, and both Lindsay and Tatsuya entered the building. However, as minutes passed by without Lindsay returning, the driver assumed she had changed her plans and left. Lindsay didn't show up for work that afternoon, and her roommates grew worried when she still hadn't returned home after several hours. They decided to contact the police and report her missing, but unfortunately the police didn't take it seriously at first. When Lindsay failed to check in at work on Monday, the Nova Teaching School contacted her parents in England to inform them. Alarmed by the situation, Lindsay's parents called the police again. During the investigation at her apartment, her roommate shared the information about the strange man she had a lesson with and handed over the sketch with his details. On Monday, March 26th at 5:40 p.m., 2 police officers were sent to Tatsuya's apartment. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. However, the kind neighbors allowed the officers to access their balcony to peek into Tatsuya's living room. The lights were off, but they could see someone inside. They also noticed that Tatsuya had moved his detachable bathtub from the bathroom to the balcony, which seemed suspicious. The officers suspected that Lindsay might be held captive in Tatsuya's apartment and called for backup. After 3 hours, 9 officers had gathered, and they began planning a raid on the apartment. However, as they were preparing to storm in, Tatsuya unexpectedly opened the door barefoot, carrying a backpack. Seizing the opportunity, he swiftly passed through the 9 officers. They managed to grab his backpack, but unfortunately, Tatsuya escaped into the darkness of the night. During the search of Tatsuya's apartment, the police made a horrifying discovery. Lindsay Hawker's lifeless body was found naked in the bathtub on the balcony. Tatsuya had covered her completely with a mixture of soil and sand, leaving only her right hand visible. Upon further investigation, they found that Tatsuya had added a substance to the soil to accelerate decomposition, and he had placed flower seeds on top to disguise it as a flower bed. He had also shaved Lindsay's hair off. Among the items found in the apartment were multiple women's wigs, indicating that Tatsuya may have been a cross-dresser. Speculation arose, suggesting he might have killed Lindsay to use her hair for a wig, but this theory was never confirmed. By the following morning, Tatsuya had become a wanted man throughout Japan. The police distributed wanted posters and aired his image on various news outlets multiple times a day, hoping for leads. However, despite these efforts, no significant breakthroughs occurred. After a couple of weeks with no solid leads, the police resorted to releasing photoshopped images of Tatsuya wearing wigs in case he was disguising himself in drag. Unfortunately, these attempts also proved fruitless, and the investigation went cold. 2 months after Lindsay's tragic death, her parents arrived in Japan to help raise awareness and put pressure on the authorities to find Tatsuya. Frustrated with the progress of the police investigation, Lindsay's father went as far as befriending members of the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, and offering them bottles of whiskey in exchange for their assistance in locating his daughter's killer. The media turned their focus on the Japanese police and began questioning their competence. How could 9 officers fail to apprehend a single man when they were about to raid his home? Why did it take them a month to question crucial witnesses? Furthermore, the revelation that the wanted picture of Tatsuya was 7 years outdated only added to the public scrutiny. The situation escalated into public arguments between the police and Lindsay Hawker's family, prompting extensive coverage from both British and Japanese media. Meanwhile, Tatsuya managed to travel across the country, moving from Aomori in the north to Okinawa, the southernmost island. In the years 2008 to 2009, Tatsuya resided in Osaka, around 250 miles west of Tokyo. He survived by sleeping in internet cafes and working on construction sites, saving up money for plastic surgery to alter his appearance. However, even before undergoing surgery, he had already mutilated his face through self-inflicted injuries. He used a knife to remove moles, cut off part of his lower lip with scissors, and even sewed a thread through his nose to change its shape. As desperation grew, the police raised the cash reward from 1 million yen to 10 million yen and released more photoshopped images suggesting that Tatsuya had likely undergone plastic surgery. In October 2009, a plastic surgeon informed the police that he believed he had recently operated on Tatsuya. The surgeon provided a before and after photo, which was promptly released to the public. The plan to alter Tatsuya's appearance through plastic surgery worked, and he managed to evade capture for a while. However, his luck ran out when a colleague on the construction site where he was working recognized him and alerted the police. In a state of panic, Tatsuya hatched a plan to escape to Okinawa and find refuge in an abandoned bunker on a remote island, a tactic he had used before when he felt the police were getting too close. On November 10, 2009, Tatsuya attempted to make his escape from Osaka's ferry port, hoping to remain unnoticed during the 3-day ferry journey. Unfortunately for him, a staff member at the port recognized him and immediately alerted security, who called the police. When questioned, Tatsuya knew he couldn't deny his identity any longer and admitted, "Yes, it is me, Tatsuya Ichihashi." He was promptly arrested on the spot. Initially charged with abandoning a body, he later faced additional charges of rape and murder. On July 4, 2011, Tatsuya Ichihashi's trial commenced. Given the nature of the crime, the deliberation was brief, and he confessed to luring Lindsay into his home, raping her and strangling her out of fear that her screams would alert the neighbors. The media focused on speculation about how the court would punish him, as Japan still practiced the death penalty. However, on July 21, 2009, Tatsuya received a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 10 years before being eligible for parole. Although many campaigned for him to receive the death penalty, it was not imposed in his case. In 2012, Tatsuya appealed his sentence, arguing that it was too harsh and claiming that Lindsay's death was accidental, as he was trying to silence her screams. However, the Tokyo High Court upheld the original sentence. Tatsuya continued to inflict pain on the Hawker family by writing a book about his time on the run from his prison cell. The book gained popularity in Britain, selling over 100,000 copies. He offered Lindsay's parents the royalties, but they declined. The book's success led to its adaptation into a film called I Am Ichihashi, The Journal of a Killer. As of 2022, Tatsuya remains imprisoned, serving his sentence.
Tonight, a family wants answers after the death of this 41-year-old man. Police say he was found shot in his car in the middle of the day along Anderson Street in Orlando.
This is a heartbreaking story about a shooting that took the life of a man named Eloy Lebron. The police conducted interviews with 2 witnesses, hoping to gather information that would help them solve the case. Unbeknownst to the investigators, they were actually interviewing the individuals responsible for the crime. One of the women, who couldn't control her words, ended up revealing crucial details that ultimately led to their arrest. It was a Thursday evening on July 23, 2020, in Orlando, Florida. The Lebron family received an unexpected knock at their door, only to discover the tragic news. When the police arrived at the scene, they found Eloy Lebron, their son, dead in his car. Earlier that day, Eloy and his friend were driving on West Anderson Street and Jernigan Avenue around 12:30 p.m. Suddenly, a car sped past them and shots were fired from the vehicle. Eloy's friend managed to duck down and avoid getting hurt, but Eloy, who was driving, was struck by the gunfire. The police immediately launched an investigation, starting with interviews of eyewitnesses at the scene. They began by speaking to Eloy's friend, who revealed that the incident happened unexpectedly, catching them off guard. In a matter of moments, their peaceful drive down the street took a terrifying turn. A car pulled up alongside them, and a barrage of bullets rained down. According to Eloy's friend, the shots originated from a 2004 Saturn Ion. As the police spoke to more witnesses, their accounts confirmed that the Saturn was indeed the source of the gunfire. Some witnesses mentioned seeing 2 young girls with guns, while others noted a girl and a boy, with only the boy holding a firearm. Fortunately, a security camera positioned on a nearby street captured the entire incident. The footage revealed that the Saturn was initially driving in the opposite direction of Eloy's car, a Toyota Tacoma. Suddenly, the Saturn executed a sharp U-turn, aggressively following Eloy. The Saturn then accelerated and changed lanes to overtake Eloy's car, unleashing a barrage of gunshots in the process. The video footage also captured the license plate number of the car involved and the person driving it. It turned out to be a woman wearing a white tank top. The following day, law enforcement pulled over a 2004 Saturn Ion with matching plates. Inside the vehicle were a woman, her daughter, and another family member. All 3 women were taken in for questioning. One of the individuals taken in for questioning was 19-year-old Markia Angelia Hamilton. Markia worked at Sonny's, a barbecue restaurant in Orlando, and had an interest in joining the military. When brought into the interrogation room, Markia appeared surprised when told she was being investigated for a murder. She denied any involvement, asking what she had to do with it. During the interrogation, Markia was questioned by 2 detectives, Detective Overfield, who was leading the case, and Detective Spragg, who was assisting him. They apologized for the wait and began gathering preliminary information about Markia. We learned that Markia has a boyfriend named Brandon, and she also has a suspended driver's license. The detectives then swear her in, and the atmosphere in the room noticeably changes. Detective Overfield gets straight to the point and asks Markia about her recent work schedule. She initially says she worked on Wednesday, the day before the incident, from 4 to 9 p.m. However, when questioned about the day of the shooting, Markia corrects herself, stating that she actually worked on Thursday from 4 to 9 p.m. and had Wednesday off. This discrepancy raises suspicion, as it seems odd to forget the day before such a significant event. Markia further explains that she woke up at her boyfriend's house around 12 p.m. on the day in question. Her cousin Sharia, who usually drives her mother's Saturn, picked her up. Markia clarifies that Sharia drives the car more often than she does, as her boyfriend has a car and usually provides transportation for her. Markia gets picked up by her cousin Sharia, and since she needs to be at work by 4 p.m., they decide to kill some time by smoking before her shift. They drive to Molly World, a place located on Jernigan Avenue and West Anderson Street. However, things become a bit unclear from this point. According to Markia, when they arrived in the neighborhood, they noticed a man running down the sidewalk. This caught their attention, and moments later they heard gunshots. They quickly left the area, nearly crashing into a white truck and even driving the wrong way down a one-way street, before eventually reaching Markia's residence a few blocks away. Strangely, she didn't mention where the gunshots came from initially. Markia then proceeds to describe the events that followed. She went to her house, washed her work clothes, smoked at the park, and eventually made her way to work. After work, Jaria picked up Markia and took her to Brandon's house, where they smoked again before returning home. Markia's alibi for Thursday, July 23, 2020, continued to change multiple times during the investigators' questioning. At one point, she claimed that she was actually picked up from work by Jaria's sister, not Jaria herself. She explained that Jaria's sister had gone to the hospital and discovered she was pregnant. This detail seemed significant and difficult to forget. Later, Markia mentioned that she didn't go to her boyfriend's house and instead went straight home with Jaria's sister. The detective speculated that Markia and Jaria may have been passengers in the car, trying to protect the men involved in the shooting. The investigators explored the possibility that someone other than Markia and Jaria were responsible for the crime, but Markia provided limited information. She mentioned names of men she knew, including her own brother and a man named Scotty, who was involved with Jeria and believed to be the father of her child. Detective Sprague asked if Maria or Jeria had been involved in any revenge or conflicts with the men mentioned earlier. Markia denied any involvement and claimed she had nothing to do with their affairs. However, the detective persisted, mentioning that multiple witnesses had seen gunshots coming from their car. It later became clear that the detectives purposely focused on eyewitness reports and not the video evidence that clearly showed Markia and Jeria at the scene with gunshots originating from their car. This tactic was intended to challenge Markia's defense, suggesting that she was lying. Ultimately, when the jury saw the undeniable video footage, it would expose any false stories Markia had concocted and further implicate her in Eloy's murder. Markia continued to deny her involvement multiple times. Detective Sprague informed Markia that multiple witnesses had claimed the shots came from her car, but Markia continued to deny it. She remained strangely calm throughout the interrogation, even when told that someone's life had been taken as a result. Most of the interrogation focused on logistical details such as the streets Markia was on and her destination. However, Markia was uncooperative, claiming she couldn't remember or wasn't paying attention. In the end, with no confession obtained, the detectives concluded the interrogation and took Markia to the shooting scene to verify her whereabouts. Despite being held for nearly 2 hours, Markia still refused to admit her involvement. Later, the investigators managed to locate Jeria and brought her in for questioning. Jeria, also 19 years old and a co-worker at Sonny's, had a boyfriend named Scotty and was confirmed to be pregnant, as mentioned in Markia's earlier testimony. We discovered that Jeria had previously lived in London, England, and faced difficulties transferring her academic credits upon moving to the United States. Consequently, she never completed high school. Furthermore, despite being the driver on the day of the shooting, she technically did not possess a valid driver's license, only holding a learner's permit. Not an ideal situation. During the interrogation, after being sworn in, the detectives informed Jeria that they had already spoken to Markia. They claimed that Markia had made certain statements during their drive to the scene, inadvertently indicating their guilt. Allegedly, Markia admitted that the man they saw running was actually running away from them and had fired back at them with his own gun. When confronted with this accusation, Jeria dismissed it, responding that she never said such a thing. She insisted on sharing her own account, describing how she received a call from Markia while she was at McDonald's and brought food for herself. After picking up her cousin, Jeria, she went to buy groceries, heard gunshots, and left the area. They then proceeded to wash Markia's work clothes before taking her to work. Many details in Jeria's story aligned with Markia's original account, suggesting that they may have coordinated their stories after Markia's release. However, their false alibis were futile, as the detectives already possessed sufficient evidence linking both of them to the crime. Jeria's questioning aimed to uncover the motive behind the shooting. Detective Braggs directly asked if she was a cold-blooded killer, to which Jeria vehemently denied. The detective then explored various scenarios, seeking a potential explanation that would not brand them as ruthless murderers. There were moments when Jeria pleaded and begged the detectives to reveal the truth. Detective Sprague believed that there must have been a motive behind the girl's decision to shoot someone, while Detective Overfield was ready to apprehend them without further consideration. Detective Sprague hoped that if the girls acknowledged extenuating circumstances, they could negotiate a better outcome in court. However, if they remained silent, the police would interpret it as an act of recklessness, potentially resulting in a life sentence, particularly considering Jeria's pregnancy. Detective Sprague made a heartfelt plea for Jeria to confess and share the complete story, but Jeria chose to stay silent. The detectives expressed their shock and horror as neither Markia nor Jeria confessed to their crimes, showed any remorse for Eloy's murder or mentioned his name. A few months later, on September 15, 2020, a 10-page arrest warrant was filed for Markia by Detective Sprague. Detective Sprague still entertained the possibility that the girls were lying to protect someone else, likely one of their boyfriends. Investigators confirmed that Markia's boyfriend Brandon had an alibi and was not with them during the incident. However, there were suspicions that Sharia's boyfriend Scotty was present, supporting the theory that the girls were not directly involved in firing any weapons or responsible for Eloy's murder. Rather, they might have been trying to shield Scotty. While they could still be held accountable for lying under oath and being accomplices to a homicide, it was a significant distinction from being responsible for first-degree murder. When asked if Scotty was in the car, Markia maintained that it was only her and Jaria. However, she did mention that earlier that day, before she was picked up, Sharia was driving around with Scotty and another man named Reggie. This detail was not initially disclosed by Jaria during her interrogation. During the interview, Detective Sprague began to consider the possibility that the shooter was seated in the front passenger seat, with Markia sitting behind them in the back seat. This could explain why witnesses claim to have seen men in the vehicle. Although Markia initially dismissed this theory, she made a significant slip-up while discussing her tattoos. She tried to argue that she couldn't be the shooter because her arm tattoos would make her easily identifiable. However, when asked about the timing of getting her tattoos, Markia visibly flinched and made a correction. Despite her attempt to use it as evidence of innocence, her mistake became a crucial piece of evidence.
When did you get those?
I had like this a few weeks ago, I think. But, you know what I'm saying?
You didn't have them before.
No, but this right here would identify.
But you didn't have them before.
I had this one before, yes.
Not when you stuck that one out the window over the hood of the car. You did not have that.
I did not have this one, no.
Correct. So it wouldn't identify you.
This same one was on
what you just did, up over the roof of the car like that, shooting, you did not have that tattoo.
Not only had Markia lied about having the tattoo on her arm, which she had obtained only a few weeks ago, but her hand motion while describing the shooting matched the description given by one of the witnesses. This marked the moment when the detectives' 2 months of hard work finally paid off. After Markia demonstrated how she would have fired the gun, it became a crucial piece of evidence for the detectives. They developed a theory that Markia and Jaria intended to send a message to someone on the street, possibly due to a dispute involving one of their boyfriends or themselves. Their initial intention may not have been to kill, but tragically an innocent man lost his life and they were held responsible. The latest update on Markia's case was in March 2021, where she was awaiting a pre-trial hearing. Sources indicate that she has been released on bail. Jaria, on the other hand, was arrested in January 2021 and is also out on bail. As of April 2023, Jaria's case is still ongoing, and a verdict is yet to be reached. This case is far from over, and the motive behind the shooting remains unclear. It is uncertain whether it was a revenge killing or if Eloy had been involved in questionable dealings with their acquaintances. One of the key questions remains: what was the motive behind the shooting? Did Eloy have any connection to Markia or Jaria, or was it a random act of violence? According to Eloy's cousin Williams, there was no known association between Eloy and the girls. He emphasized that Eloy was not just another statistic in the troubling times we live in, but a genuinely good person. Detective Sprague and Overfield were disheartened and frustrated by the cavalier attitudes displayed by Markia and Jaria during their interrogations. It is truly unsettling how heartless these girls appeared, as they never acknowledged their involvement in Eloy's tragic fate. Even now, as the case continues, new evidence could surface, but based on the current footage and their careless behavior during the homicide investigation, Markia and Jaria's future looks grim. In a tangled web of mystery and suspicion, a police officer finds himself at the center of a shocking incident.
Police department! Police department!
The evidence paints a haunting picture. A shot to the head, a dubious suicide label. Yet, against all odds, his wife miraculously survives, becoming the beacon of hope for uncovering the truth. But despair grips all who seek justice when she awakens with no memory of the fateful event. As the case threatens to be swept aside, a tenacious quest for answers unfolds, fueled by an unwavering determination to unravel the enigma surrounding this dark and clandestine affair. Georgia, situated in the southeastern region of the United States. Known for its rich history, vibrant culture, and stunning landscapes, Georgia offers a unique blend of southern charm, modern cities, and breathtaking natural beauty. With Atlanta as its bustling capital and largest city, Georgia is a state that effortlessly combines urban sophistication with the tranquility of the countryside. But one day in 2016, an incident shook the community of Griffin when the wife of a Griffin police officer miraculously survived a gunshot to the head from his service weapon. The officer in question, Matthew Boynton, faced severe consequences following the incident, but not directly related to the shooting itself.
She told me she loved me, but she did it. What am I kids gonna do?
On July 28, 2017, Boynton found himself arrested for providing false information to his department regarding the possession of a gym bag containing his estranged wife Jessica's personal belongings. Tragically, Jessica was in a coma during this time, and she had packed the bag with the intention of leaving Boynton, planning to take their 2 young children with her. Initially, Boynton denied having any knowledge of the bag's whereabouts. However, it was his then-girlfriend who provided a crucial tip that led to the discovery of the bag. She notified Will Sanders, and he purchased the bag from Boynton's girlfriend and promptly handed it over to the Griffin Police Department. In the face of this evidence, Boynton eventually confessed to his actions. As the investigation unfolded, authorities also examined Sanders' involvement in the matter. Ultimately, Jessica's shooting was deemed a suicide, despite some concerns raised by her doctor at the Atlanta Trauma Center. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, cleared Boynton of any involvement in the shooting. However, after Boynton and Jessica finalized their divorce, Jessica filed a complaint against Boynton with the Griffin Police Department, accusing him of refusing to return her belongings. During the course of the investigation, statements were taken from both Boynton and Jessica. Boynton vehemently claimed not to possess any of Jessica's belongings, even signing a statement to that effect. Griffin police officer Matthew Boynton was questioned by his own department, including Lieutenant Karen Yancey and Sergeant John Hayes, in an interrogation room. The purpose of the interview was not an internal investigation, but a criminal investigation. Boynton had been arrested for providing a false statement to his department regarding possession of a gym bag that belonged to his now former wife, Jessica. During the interview, Boynton was read his Miranda rights, and Yancey reminded him that anything he said could be used against him in a court of law. Boynton initially claimed that he didn't have any of Jessica's belongings and that everything had been returned to her. However, Yancey presented a photo of the bag in question and asked Boynton if he recognized it. Boynton acknowledged that it was the bag Jessica had allowed him to use for his gym items when they were together. Let's take a look at how everything unfolded during the interview. During the course of the investigation, Matthew was questioned about any belongings of his wife, Jessica, that he might have had in his possession. He brought up a missing Nike bag and suggested that it could potentially be in storage. Interestingly, it was revealed that Matthew himself owned a Nike bag that was typically used for their gym gear. This information raised intrigue and indicated the possibility of further significance. Upon delving deeper, investigators discovered that Matthew's stepfather had placed the bag in storage but its contents had not been thoroughly examined in recent times. These findings added a new layer of importance to the ongoing investigation, prompting the need for further scrutiny and exploration. The detectives continued their relentless questioning, specifically honing in on the mysterious disappearance of the Nike bag. They suggested the possibility that it may have been inadvertently misplaced during the process of moving. However, doubts persisted regarding whether Matthew possessed more information about the bag's whereabouts than he was willing to divulge. The detectives recognized the potential significance of the bag as a potential source of vital evidence and were resolute in their determination to locate it. Their unwavering focus on finding the bag underscored its potential value in advancing the progress of the investigation. Eventually, it was revealed that Matthew's new girlfriend was in possession of Jessica's Nike bag, shedding light on the reason behind all the inquiries. Overwhelmed by emotions, Matthew was unable to hold back his distress as he contemplated the far-reaching consequences of the investigation on his children and his career. Despite his vulnerable state, the detective remained persistent, relentlessly probing Matthew about his failure to mention the Nike bag earlier. In an attempt to defend himself, Matthew began offering excuses, desperately trying to justify his previous omissions and inconsistencies. The room grew increasingly tense as the weight of the situation, combined with the detective's unyielding questioning, created a palpable atmosphere of tension and unease. Matthew's deep concern for his career and the welfare of his children became evident as he contemplated his actions and recognized his failure to fulfill his obligations. Or is this just a facade to portray in front of the police? As the interrogation finally came to an end, Matthew was left alone to grapple with his thoughts and emotions. However, his distressing situation took another devastating turn when he received the disheartening news that he had been relieved of his duties as a police officer. This development only added to the weight of his already overwhelming circumstances, leaving him in a state of profound despair. In a perplexing turn of events, Jessica awoke to find herself afflicted with amnesia, unable to recall the details of the shooting incident. Astonishingly, despite evidence to the contrary, the authorities inexplicably classified the shooting as an attempted suicide, abruptly closing the case. This puzzling conclusion left numerous questions unanswered and unresolved, leaving a lingering sense of uncertainty and a need for further investigation into the incident. Following a resilient battle, Jessica emerged from a 3-week coma and is now in a stable condition, showcasing an incredible recovery. However, her memory continues to be impaired, leaving a significant gap in her recollection of the events that unfolded during that period. Despite this setback, Jessica's overall health has improved, and she is gradually regaining her strength while adjusting to her restored well-being. Nevertheless, the path to recovering her lost memories remains challenging and uncertain, posing a daunting journey for Jessica and all those involved in the investigation. The case at hand continues to hold an air of mystery, with indications that a wealth of undisclosed information lies beneath the surface of the current findings. The ongoing investigation has only begun to scratch the veneer, leaving behind a multitude of unanswered questions and intricate complexities that yearn to be unraveled. As the narrative unfolds, it becomes increasingly evident that the true nature of the events involves a web of interconnected layers, still concealed, intensifying the captivating enigma that surrounds this perplexing case. During the questioning conducted by a GBI agent, Matthew Boynton vehemently denied any change of clothing on the night of the incident. However, compelling evidence emerged that directly contradicted his statement. The footage captured by an officer's body camera revealed Matthew wearing a distinctive red jacket at the scene, while surveillance footage from a Walmart later that same night depicted him in entirely different attire. These glaring discrepancies cast a shadow of doubt over Matthew's veracity and potentially implicate him further in the unfolding events. The case surrounding the alleged shooting of Jessica, Matthews' former wife, remains shrouded in mystery, giving rise to a multitude of perplexing questions. Contrary to Matthews' initial report, it has been discovered that Jessica was not shot in the head. Instead, the evidence strongly suggests that she sustained a blow to the head from a blunt object, as there was a conspicuous absence of bullet wounds or gunshot residue on her hands. This startling revelation adds to the intrigue and raises significant concerns about the accuracy of Matthews' account and his potential involvement in the incident. Further investigation has revealed significant inconsistencies between Matthews' reported timeline of events and witness testimony, surveillance footage, and other evidence. Moreover, Matthews' behavior during the investigation, including his falsehoods about changing his clothes and washing his hands, as well as his subsequent theft of Jessica's property and subsequent lies about it, further heightens suspicions about his overall credibility. Despite the presence of glaring discrepancies and compelling evidence to the contrary, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation shockingly closed the case, deeming it a suicide. This decision completely disregarded the crucial information that emerged, including Jessica's survival from the incident with a severe head injury and her subsequent memory loss. The mishandling of the investigation, coupled with the potential for a cover-up, reveals a distressing lack of justice for Jessica. In response to these deeply concerning circumstances, a petition has gained momentum, calling for the involvement of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to assume control of the case. The petition advocates for a thorough and comprehensive examination of all leads and evidence, aiming to ensure that justice is served for Jessica, who has been denied the closure she deserves. Additionally, the petition seeks to protect others from potential harm if Matthew is indeed responsible for the incident. Given the pressing urgency and profound significance of this matter, it is imperative that swift and appropriate action is taken to uncover the truth, rectify the failures of the initial investigation, and provide a fair and equitable resolution for Jessica. The pursuit of justice in this case must not waver until the full truth is revealed and those responsible are held accountable. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Also, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Matthew is guilty or innocent?
In the glow of her prime and on the cusp of a joyous union, a vibrant young court reporter embraced the pinnacle of happiness. But fate had a cruel twist in store, shattering her idyllic existence in a single fateful night.
Well, Sacramento County's oldest cold case has finally been solved. 52 years later, after a county court reporter was murdered, authorities say they know who the suspected killer is.
The enchanting tale of her life morphed into a harrowing nightmare as she fell victim to a savage and senseless crime that would lead investigators searching for nearly half a century. Prepare to delve into the haunting chronicle of Nancy Marie Bennallack, a story that will grip your soul as we navigate the depths of tragedy, seeking answers and justice for a life cut tragically short. This story takes us in the 1970s in Sacramento, California, where people lived a peaceful and normal life. But that peaceful life quickly turned into a tragedy for Nancy and her family. Nancy Marie Bennallack was born on June 13, 1942, in Nevada, San Bernardino County, California. She grew up in Grass, Nevada with her parents, Brian Addison Bennallack and Elaine Laverne Kessler, and had a sister named Linda. Nancy attended Hennessy School and later Nevada Union High School. After graduating, she went to beauty school and worked as a hairstylist in Hawaii for some time. Later, she trained as a court reporter and worked in the Sacramento District Court. Nancy lived alone with her cat in an apartment complex on Arden Way, Bell Street in Sacramento. She had a happy life and was engaged to Ferris Salami, who worked as the chief public defender in the same court. At the age of 28, Nancy's life seemed perfect. She was happily engaged to Salami, and they were planning to get married on November 28, 1970. However, tragedy struck on October 25th, 1970. Nancy and Salami went out for dinner after work and returned to Nancy's apartment afterwards. Since Nancy was exhausted, she fell asleep while Salami was still there. It was late at night when Salami decided to leave. He checked the time, which was 11:30 p.m., and followed Nancy's usual practice of leaving the glass door slightly open for her cat. Unfortunately, these two decisions would have dire consequences. The next morning, Nancy's co-workers noticed that she was absent from work, which was unusual because she always gave prior notice if she couldn't make it. Concerned, one of her co-workers called Nancy's son, Jack, to check on her at her apartment. Jack knocked on the door multiple times but received no response. He realized something was wrong and hurried to the building manager to explain the situation. After some discussion, the manager agreed to open Nancy's door. What they discovered inside was a horrifying sight they would never forget. Nancy was lying lifeless in a pool of her own blood. She had suffered multiple stab wounds all over her body, and her head was nearly decapitated. The building manager and Jack immediately called the police, who arrived at the scene shortly after. The question on everyone's mind, including the investigators, was who could have committed such a heinous crime. Nancy's sister Linda, who was already worried about her sister's absence, received a call from her husband, Tom, urging her to come home immediately. Linda sensed something was terribly wrong. Tom broke the devastating news of Nancy's death to her, and also informed Nancy's mother, who was working on Lytton Hill. The police collected some evidence from the crime scene, but it was not sufficient. They reviewed tapes from the area surrounding the crime scene, but realized a thorough investigation was necessary. Detectives found blood all over the crime scene. Mickey Lynx, the lead detective, believed that the assailant used tape to conceal their fingerprints since none were found. Back then, gloves weren't as readily available as they are now. The investigators also discovered a blood trail, indicating that the killer had been injured. The trail led from the balcony on the second floor down to the sidewalk, then to two other apartment buildings, and finally ending in the parking lot. This led them to believe that the killer had left the apartment in a vehicle. Further examination of Nancy's body revealed over 30 stab wounds. The investigators determined that she was murdered between 11:30 p.m. when Salami left and in the early hours of October 26, 1970. Despite interviewing more than 500 people, the investigators couldn't find any suspects. Nancy had no known enemies, so this was unexpected. However, one of Nancy's neighbors, Alice Sylvia, reported hearing a scream and footprints around 1:30 a.m. This was believed to be the time of the murder. The crime scene investigation provided some insights. The perpetrator was believed to be a young and agile person who entered Nancy's room by climbing up the second-story balcony through the open glass door. There were signs of a struggle, evident from the wounds on Nancy's arms. The investigators believed that the killer got injured during the altercation, which explained the blood trail. Unfortunately, at that time, there was no advanced DNA technology available. The investigators could only determine the killer's blood group, which wasn't enough to solve the case. The years went by and the case remained unsolved. Nancy's friends and family sought justice, but without technological advancements, there was little progress. 7 months before Nancy's death, another woman named Judith Ann Hikari, a registered nurse, was also murdered in close proximity to Nancy's apartment. The police began connecting the two cases due to similarities. Judith, too, was engaged and worked in a professional field. Detectives speculated that both women could have been victims of the infamous Zodiac Killer, a serial killer who operated during the 1960s and 70s. The Zodiac Killer targeted couples in secluded areas near San Francisco and often left behind signs and coded messages to taunt the police. In these correspondences, he threatened to carry out killing sprees and bombings if his messages weren't published. Some of the letters contained secret codes or puzzles where the killer claimed that he was gathering victims as slaves for the afterlife. Out of the 4 codes he created, 2 remained unsolved, and only 1 was cracked in 2020. Although the Zodiac stopped sending written messages around 1974, the unique nature of the case has garnered international attention that has endured over the years. The San Francisco Police Department classified the case as inactive in April 2004, but reopened it before March 2007. The investigation is also ongoing in the city of Vallejo, as well as in Napa and Solano counties. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open file on the Zodiac murders since 1969. However, despite the similarities, there was no concrete evidence linking the Zodiac killer to Nancy and Judith's cases. To this day, the identity of the Zodiac killer remains unknown, and Judith Hikari's case remains unsolved. In 2004, after 34 years, a DNA profile was developed from the blood found at the crime scene using new technology. However, when the profile was uploaded to the DNA database, there were no matches with any known offenders. The case went cold once again, and Nancy's family started losing hope. Nearly 5 decades after Nancy's death, in November 2019, detectives from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Cold Case Team and the District Attorney's Office launched a new forensic genetic genealogy investigation. This technology had previously been successful in identifying other criminals, such as the Golden State Killer or the No-Cal rapist. The DNA profile developed in 2004 was uploaded to a genealogy website to trace potential relatives of the suspect. It took 3 years of waiting, but finally, with the help of a relative who provided their DNA, the detectives were able to identify the killer after over 50 years. On July 21st, 2022, Nancy's killer was identified as Richard John Davis. He lived in the same apartment complex as Nancy and had planned her murder. Richard John Davis, who was 27 years old at the time of the crime, resided in an apartment opposite Nancy's. He could easily observe Nancy's movements from his own apartment. Detective Mickey Lynx, now retired, revealed in a press conference that Davis had premeditated Nancy's murder. He broke into her apartment through the partially opened glass, covering his fingers with tape, indicating careful planning. The motive behind Davis's actions remains unclear, but detectives speculate that he may have had feelings for Nancy and became enraged when he learned of her upcoming marriage. There were no known disputes or conversations between Davis and Nancy, according to the extensive interviews conducted with 500 people. Davis and his roommate provided strong alibis for each other during the month after Nancy's death. There were no visible wounds on Davis's arms or hands during the investigation. The information regarding Davis's roommate and their current status is not provided. Presenting a false alibi is a serious crime, and it is important to determine if the roommate was questioned about it after it was found out who the murderer was. Davis had no prior convictions except for a charge of driving under the influence, which is why his DNA was not found in the criminal database. He lived freely in Sacramento while Nancy's family and her fiancé mourned her loss, holding on to the hope that her killer would be brought to justice. Unfortunately, Nancy's fiancé, Salami, passed away from leukemia in 2014, never seeing the day the killer was identified. Davis himself passed away on November 2nd, 1997, at the age of 54 due to illness related to alcoholism. If he were alive, he would have been charged with first-degree premeditated murder. Detective Lynx expressed her sadness during the press conference, acknowledging that the legal justice could not be fully served. She hoped that Nancy's sister, Linda, and her husband, Tom, could find some peace in finally knowing the identity of Nancy's killer. Linda, overcome with emotion, listened to the speech in tears. Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert commended the dedicated work of the investigators emphasizing that justice can sometimes lie dormant for years before being awakened. She expressed gratitude that Nancy was never forgotten and praised the relentless pursuit of truth. Linda Cox, Nancy's sister, expressed her appreciation to the officials for solving the case, admitting that she had almost lost hope of ever finding justice for Nancy. This tragic tale unveils how a life can swiftly fade away when we least anticipate it. Fortunately, in today's era, advanced technologies exist to identify and apprehend perpetrators of heinous crimes. The advent of DNA testing on cold cases has undoubtedly instilled fear in the hearts of countless murderers and rapists, compelling them to run scared, knowing that justice may be closing in. As we reflect upon this narrative, our hearts ache for the young woman who met such a cruel fate. The unimaginable fear and excruciating pain she endured during her final hours are truly harrowing. It is an atrocity beyond comprehension. While this tale evokes profound sadness, it also underscores the importance of our unwavering commitment to the pursuit of justice.